Once again, very happy, and we get straight into it. Attila Springer is here. Good morning. Thank you for your presence.
Good morning, TK. Nice to be here.
No, tomorrow is the Kambule reenactment. I like to call it, it's almost as though it's the libation over the carnival and just start the whole thing moving and putting it in a context. But give us an overview of what happens tomorrow morning, please.
I think libation is a good way to describe it. And I was just saying, I was just on Good Morning TNT, and I was saying that, Kambule is much more than a play. It's a ritual. It's a very sacred moment in the carnival space, and in as much as we love the wine and jam and the jumping up and all of that, that carnival Friday morning at 4 a.m. when we take take the road, and if for people who are followers of Orisha tradition, that Ogun owns the road, right? And so to give honor to the owner of the road is important for us, because the road is what we claim, right? And the road is what takes us, the street those streets that connect the whole of Port of Spain. We claim the right to be in the road. As Kitchener says, the road make to walk carnival day, and some of us like to hide behind rope, and some of us feel that rope, makes us more deserving of the road, or paying $5,000 for a costume makes us more deserving of the road. But on Kambule morning, we say that the road is for all of us. The road is sacred, and the road is symbolic of our collective journey, and we need to be very aware of that and be very careful to make sure that we have the permission of the energies. People like to think that, it's all very esoteric and stuff, but, all the scientists say that everything is energy. Everything is energy. And so acknowledging that we have all of this wonderful energy in our space is really important. And sometimes it's negative and sometimes it's positive, but in the tradition, we say that without the negative, you coming together with the positive, you cannot have forward movement. You cannot create energy for progress. And so we need to look at all of the different elements and take all of that, and so that we can move forward as a society, looking back as we move forward.
And then sometimes looking back, you see that some of the actions, some of the energy that may have been viewed as negative, you realize that it was quite necessary.
But I think that when we look back objectively at the people who would have been documenting the time, the people who would have had access to the newspapers, for example, the people who would have owned the newspapers in the first place would have been the planter class, right? They would have come here with a certain understanding of the urban poor, who would have been just 20 years before that their property, right? So they would have had a particular understanding of those people. They would have had a particular understanding based on their faith, which said that, Africa is of the devil, right? In no uncertain terms. So anything that had to do with Africa was demonized, right? And then to add insult to injury, to criminalize people's cultural and spiritual forms. So you have a society which is divided by people who think that people are property, right? And people who are fighting to be people, right? And the people who think that these people are property are the ones in power, and they're the ones saying these people are savages, they're obscene, they are primitive. Look at them running in the streets with their masks, and they're shouting and screaming and playing their drums and carrying these flambeaux. How savage, and without any kind of understanding. They would not have seen African masking forms as that. They would not have seen any
You're talking,
any.
you're talking about it. I'm a post starting to raise because
Yeah.
I would have loved to have gotten your take on the issue of Bunji Garlin and his masking before going on stage and getting into character. And I say that in the context that possibly the day or 2 days before, I spoke with some Babas, one of them being Baba Fulami.
Yeah.
And he was actually speaking about the fact that
You have to
Carnival
cover. You're
is a
supposed to cover your
masking thing.
face. You are supposed to cover your face. In African masking tradition, it is about anonymity because the mask, when the mask it comes out, right? The mask is for healing. The mask is for censure, CENSURE, right? So the mask is the only thing that could go and tell the king that he doing foolishness, right? The mask is the only energy that could bring the society back to order. That is the purpose of the mask, right? You're not supposed to know the people who are part of that secret society, right? Masking societies are secret societies, right? And the reason that you're supposed to protect your identity is that one, you are in an altered state, right? So you are spiritually strong because you have done all of your rituals. But then also too, if you are taking this opportunity to put the society back in line, there's some people who are not going to be pleased about that, you know? And so it's really, really, and remember, these are people that you have to live with all the time, right? So it can't be that one day you are this person, and then the next day you have to be walking on your own. You're like, yeah, yesterday you tell me how I should go back to my wife. How you can say that? Yesterday you talk all my business in the road, and now you expect me. So the mask was really an opportunity for people to be free of their personal identity, right? So that they can transform into something else. And for people who are oppressed, you know, lots of times the transformations were, you know, imagined greatness or remembered greatness, or, you know, trying to find back some greatness, trying to transcend the horrible, traumatic circumstances of their daily existence, which in lots of cases, you know, it was the conditions were, you know, there's a line in Kambule, the living conditions were worse, were subhuman. They were worse than, you know, it's like, you know, people were living in barrackyards on top of each other, you know, very, very thin board separated, you know, there's no privacy, there's no, you know, nothing, you know, but people within those spaces trying to find their humanity. And the ways that they found their humanity was through their art. And it is a process for us to get to where we can see what these Jamets did as art. You know, because it was not seen as art by the planter class. They saw it as savagery. But when you go back and you look at, you know, masking traditions in West Africa, and you see the level of intricacy, the level of story, the level of you know, masses go on there. You know, it's phenomenal. You know, if you look at the fact that Dogon people of Mali, they had a mass that they play which talks about the dog star, which was only very, very recently discovered by Western science, right? So just imagine these people are using their mass to go outer space, and then somebody's coming and telling them that there's something backward and savage and not there's no physics, there's no geometry, there's no history, there's no nothing, there's no language, and there's all of that in their mass. I mean, if you think about, have you ever tried to walk on stilts?
Yes.
You know,
and I didn't have. I had a warm time of it.
Yeah, because it requires a certain level of core strength. It requires a certain level of bad-mindedness to feel that you are enough to stand on these things. You know, there's so much about our traditional mass that came out of the Jamet Carnival, that came out of the Kambule, that came out of the Juve, that we do not value. You know, the Jab Malasi, which is the spirit of an enslaved person who fell into a vat of molasses, who lost a limb in some horrible accident on a plantation in the mechanization of the sugarcane industry. So the anointing of your body with this thing that is being used to enslave you, is like a kind of, it's a double-edged thing. It's saying, this is mine. I use my body to make this, so I deserve it. And it is also too devaluing it in the face of the people who have forced you to make it. So there's so much that is going on. There's so much satire and so much critical engagement with the society that's going on. People talk about Pissanli as, this disgusting mass, but, Pissanli was about the people who worked in these houses exposing the fact that these people were stink, they just left everything for these people to clean up, and so in as much as the Jamets were looked down upon as lower end of the society, in their mass, they found ways of saying, yeah, but you're looking down at us from your genteel Victorian position, but we know what's going on underneath your skirts, because we are the ones who are washing your sheets, being raped by your husbands. We are the ones who are going through this every day.
And it's interesting that you talk about this satire, because a conversation that I want to have, so I'm putting it out to the universe, is with Ultimate Rejects, and past the hype on stage, but a lot of the process that went into it, and even looking at the name and taking what people throw at you and owning it and turning it into a source of power.
Yeah.
That actually reminded me of an Oriental tradition where you take, you fix things and you put gold leaf, so you highlight the breaks.
The wabi, the wabi, it's Japanese, Japanese culture.
So as opposed to hiding the flaws, these flaws are what make you different.
But the thing about Ultimate Reject song that is true for me is that it is the ultimate Jamet song, in that what it says is that these systems do not exist for us in the first place. So whether it's there or not there, we will still be here. We will still be creating. We will still be resisting. We will still be building a society, right? We will still be running our susu. We will still be going and helping each other build house. We will still be doing all of those things. Whether the treasury there, whether the city there, our communities will still be there, surviving and doing what we have to do for our communities to survive.
What is the role of the Jamet in this space, in this time where treasuries or methods or ways of being are being called into question, if not outright failing? And looking at
I think the role of the Jamet is to keep creating, whether or not these systems acknowledge. The Jamet is to keep creating. The Jamet is to keep creating spaces of inclusion as well. Because what we have now is we are back to the 19th century in our society. We are back to where you have a governor's ball, and where you have a Jamet carnival on the streets. So so there is the governor's ball, which is the all-inclusive, ultra-inclusive, exclusive, right? The VVVVVVIP, right? The people who are walking around with their arms, with bands from all the feds that they've gone to up to their elbow, because that is some kind of symbol of, one, their stamina, and two, how much money they have to be able to afford 90 feds in 3 days. So there is that format which does not acknowledge Carnival as a space where people are creating, where people are working hard every day and every night. I know so many of those people who have not slept in weeks because they, and it's not just about the people who are making the costumes either, it's about the parents who are out there with their children. It's about the people who driving you to and from. It's about the person who making the nuts so that you have something to eat. It's about, it's about all of those little people, those invisible people who you don't see on the stage, but they are crucial to this movement of people, this mass of people that moves through the world. Because it's not just about Trinidad, it's about the whole world. Anywhere you have 2 or 3 Trinis gathered, you have a Trinidad-style carnival. And it starts most of the time with Juve, right? Because Juve is that ultimate moment of freedom. Juve is a living canvas. Juve is a democratization of the idea of beauty. It's so many things. But I've lost my train of thought because I haven't slept well. But the role of the Jamet, to get back to that point, the role of the Jamet is to create spaces of inclusion, because ultimately the governor's ball is not for us, right? And so if the governor's ball is not for us, what we doing? And we have to, if you consider yourself a Jamet or you consider yourself below, not of that, right? Where do you find your space and who do you find your space with? And how do you articulate that space? And there are people doing really amazing things that don't get seen necessarily, but they're there and they're doing the work. They're there and they're doing the work. Last night in Skinner's Park, there was stick fight, and there's a lot of tension now in terms of the evolution of how the thing goes. And that's important for that to happen. It's important for it to go back into the communities, to go back away from the formulaic safeness of the national competition, and to go back into the communities, into the community guiles, and start to root our young people in a different kind of understanding of themselves, understanding of their bodies, understanding of their aggression, and this is the work of people like the Bois Academy, who are trying to use that, use the fact that we have this martial tradition. And in every civilization, you have martial tradition, you have ritual violence. Because we, as human beings, we have a natural tendency to aggression. And so if you have a safe space where that aggression can be expressed, then you don't have the outbursts of aggression that are kind of terrifying us all right now. And so we need to find a way to use those Jamet forms. Right, so the pan is also a very, very important part of that. And just think about the history of the pan and where the pan came from young boys who, they weren't given any MacArthur grant, they weren't given any, Guggenheim fellowship or anything like that. They were just fellas who saw something else. They were chemists, they were alchemists, they were ironsmiths, they were magicians, they were scientists, they were physicists who took an idea and made it into something that is capturing the world. And this is our legacy, and we need to find a way for us to articulate that legacy in a way that it really captures the minds of our young people. So it's not just about something that you're doing. You're just doing it because, well, that's what we come and meet. You're doing it because you understand the power of what you're doing. You understand and you engage in the power of what you're doing. And this is really what Kambule is about for us. Coming back to Kambule and coming back to the importance of that ritual. When we start Kambule rehearsals, the first thing that we do is we sit down and talk to them about what they know of their history, what they know about Port of Spain,
and different people.
What they know about
different people are part of it. So what do you think, for people who have not necessarily been a part of it before, what are some of the biggest gaps that you see in terms of the knowledge base, be it actual knowledge or just focus on sensibility about it and our culture?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, just to switch back, that Marshall and Bungie have sung this song, Busted.
I was going to ask you about that.
Which is an amazing song. The first time I heard it, like, I felt like blood rushed to the back of my head. And I was like, do they understand what they are doing by invoking the name Joe Talmana? And later on that same night, after the song was released, I was somewhere, and I repeated this thought that I had to a few adults who are older than me, my age, younger than me. And I said, yeah, you understand what it means that Marshall and Bungie talking about Joe Talmana? And most of the people who I was talking to did not know who Joe Talmana is. And this is the crux of what is going on in the society. That we don't know what Olive means. We don't know who Joe Talmana is. So we have this amazing song which gives context, but the history is lacking. The history is lacking because because our education is failing us. Our education is not situating us in our story. And it's not that Trinidad story is the only story or Tobago story is the only story, but we need to see our story within the wider context. So the fact that we sing Love Ways in Trinidad, that they used to sing in Haiti as well, when they were walking down on Napoleon troops, there are similar songs that are sung in Trinidad that as were sung in Haiti. This is the context that we need to constantly find. The fact that we still talk about the fact that Carnival is French is extremely problematic, because if you really trace it back, you will see that the Romans who influenced the Catholicism were really taking from the Egyptian Osirian tradition of Isis, putting back together the pieces of Osiris's body. And then when there was the arrival of the boat at the on the banks of the Nile, when the body arrives, it would be greeted by a stick fight. This is a ritual that we don't know about. This is a ritual, and so we don't understand that this thing is going way, 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 way back, right? And we're talking about French. Had nothing to do with France. It have nothing to do with France. Pierre Grenade have nothing to do with France. Moko Jambi have nothing to do with France. Dame Lorraine have nothing to do with France. And these are the things that we need to say to each other. We need to say to our children that you have something. It's not that you have nothing. This is the received knowledge that our children are getting, and it needs to stop.
So you think part of that erasure is part of the reason that it may actually be, you said that we are not the only people who have a story, but at the same time looking and seeing that we do have a story as opposed to getting someone else's story and saying this is something that needs to be affirmed, needs to be held up, needs to be acknowledged, and in so doing, you pave the way, because we started off talking about the road and clearing the road. You pave the way to move forward so you can have more visions and more possibilities and more discoveries and more bells of Ogun and moving forward like
absolutely, that. Absolutely. And, just like talking about context, it's context. In 1884, there was still Kambule riots going on, but there was also 2 Jose riots, and we our political understanding from our very misguided and narrow-minded political leadership, is that Indians and Africans don't like each other. This is patently untrue. That was a colonial effort to get us to not work together, because in the 19th century, everybody used to be helping everybody else, right? So if I don't know how to make this big piece of thing, right? So I want to build a Taja, but I don't have the materials. So I know that this man is make mass. So I'm going to go and talk to him and ask him how he is do that. And he will come and say, yeah. Well, what you have to do is do this. Artists were always working together, right? So when the Hosea riots happened, it wasn't just Shia Muslims who were shot. It wasn't just Shia Muslims who walked from plantations all over the country. It was Africans, it was indigenous people, it was indentured people, it was Hindus. That is the story of our creative community, that we always stood together, we always expressed solidarity for each other. And the fact that, and you see that in the Black Indian Mass as well, which is a celebration of our indigenous and African alliance, right? And the survival that happened between those two groups. And we don't see those things. We don't articulate those things. So we constantly fighting for scraps and constantly fighting for the winning, for the gold prize in the Victim Olympics. When we have such a long tradition of solidarity between each other, we have such a long tradition of shared spiritual, cultural, food, all sorts of things, alliance that we could be drawing on and giving context to our current situation without being destructive and without falling back into that narrow competition between patriarchies.
You thought you were going to drop so many pearls of wisdom when you came in this morning. But one of the things you said, that it starts at 4, but you also spoke about fighting for scraps. People are there before the call time of 2, so I think it would be in your best interest if you're making it there to Piccadilly to get there on time.
There on time.
On time
get
is
there,
real early.
Yeah, get there early.
There've been calls to shift it. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, it was shifted before because it actually used to take place at the site of the actual riot, which was on the corner of Duke and George Street, right outside All Stars Spaniard. So that was originally where it used to take place. And because of the growing interest in it, it had to be moved from there. And so it was moved to Piccadilly. It's possible that it could be moved again because there's so much interest in it. A couple of years ago, there were all of these MTV and HBO people here. And, after Carnival, they asked them, what were the things that they liked the most? And they were like, Kambule, the stick fight, the traditional mass. So, duh. Because those are the things that are the most visually interested and engaging and, have some kind of narrative. So it's not just about 10,000 feathered women who cannot fly. It's about something. It's about a root and a branch and a story. And so in as much as we love the Piccadilly Greens area, if we have to move it, it would be great to move it to a Panyard, for example. I mean, I'm just talking totally off my own head right now and without the, the permission of Ida Kader to say that. But, just to say, this work is exciting, important work. And, our family company, Ida Kader Group, which is made up of, it's a collective of women in my family, starting with our matriarch, Ida Marie Guerra Attillah, who is passed on, but she's still there with us all the time, with her storytelling self and her dry wit and humor, and walking in the footsteps of work that my mom, N2 Springer, has done, in terms of that reconnection to the story, reconnection to the, and we have to talk about people like John Cupid, who was the first person who did that reenactment when it was a very small exercise. It was John Cupid, Tony Hall, Norman Fullerton, who were involved in that in those first years. And because of my mom's involvement, because my mom's involvement in the Regional Carnival Committee of NCC for years, she was like, look, let me write a script. And, and so it's evolved from there, and we've seen so many amazing young people come forward. We have lots of students from DCFA who are taking part in the production this year. We have Wassa Foley. We have, it's as usual, it's an amazing experience where we get to inspire 15, 20 young people to understand their history and understand their story. Like the first day we had a reading, and these young women are like, they just on it. They are capturing that energy in a way that is just like, way dread. This is what we have, and this is what we are not harnessing and are not encouraging and not giving enough space to, because Kambule is once a year, and of course, Idacada has other work that we do throughout the year, but I mean, Kambule is that, like, just, that most wonderful time of the year for us.
And we want to thank you for coming, making the time, and sharing with us the efforts, and far more importantly, or as important, the context and the reason that this is happening, and the fact that all these things are going on, and they're going on within this space, and we have many things to be proud about, but also a responsibility to take forward. Attillah Springer, thank you so much, Modupe, Ashe, and we want to thank you for tuning in and staying here. Talk City 91.1 FM.
This is The Contender. You are listening to Talk City 91.1 FM, 1.1 FM, 1.1 FM, 1.1 FM.